All right, comfy.
Yeah.
What is your name?
My name is Joshypierre. You can call me JP.
All right, JP. What is your testimony?
My testimony. My testimony is a rather interesting one. I grew up in, okay, never mind. But my testimony is for me, it's a glorious one. At least for me anyway, you know. But being that it is my testimony, I find that it is not one that I take lightly anymore. My testimony from where I was, and you know where I am now, I am very grateful for what God has been doing in my life. For a very long time now, I have battled with certain struggles that have kept me from moving forward, mentally, emotionally, you know, physically, and it has kept holding me back. But God had to, like the good father that He is, He constantly reminds me of His goodness, and you know why I shouldn't hang on to the past, why I shouldn't be so caught up in the future, and living in the present is what's important. To start off, I guess you could say it started when I was, I'll say 13. At this point in my life, I'm trying to figure out what the world is. I'm trying to figure out, you know, what everything is. I'm trying to figure out who I am. You know, I'm not heavy in scripture, and you know, my passion of learning scripture, but you know, I'm still going to church, you know, as per my parents who go to church and who served in church, and I'm there because I'm just there. I was in youth. I was active in youth, and because I was in youth, I was in the choir. I was part of the subcommittee of the youth under the main youth committee. I was part of the welcome committee. I was doing any and everything that I could to get pats on the back, and you know that's one of my first struggles in life, people pleasing. At 13, 14, 15, I did nothing but people pleasing. I tried to make everything and everyone else a priority in my life, to the point where I wanted everyone to be happy with me, regardless of if my choice, I wasn't happy with the choices I was making, as long as it made other people happy, and as long as it made other people pleased with me, and I got pats on the back or head rubs, and I was okay with that. But I lost myself in that because I tried to be somebody that everyone else was happy with.
Did you get saved at 17, 18?
I got saved at 14.
Mm-hmm.
However, I wasn't totally sure on what being saved was. I only got saved because, you know, I knew my mom would be watching, and I wanted her to be pleased with the fact that, okay, I'm up here with all the other young kids who are getting that prayer of salvation, who the pastor's praying over them. That's another thing we did, like when we were younger at my old church. Like, you know, we go up there. We did the same prayer of salvation, but it wasn't a call and repeat like at Alive. They would just pray over us, and then, you know, we're saved. And that's what they did. You know, they prayed over us, and we got saved. And I'm like, after that, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm saved now, right? I guess. But I still found myself sinning. I still found myself same patterns. I still found myself in the same patterns of, you know, lust and perversion and all these other stuff, doubting and worry. I'm getting lost, and you know, I'm still being disobedient to my parents and disrespectful to them. I'm still lying. I'm still doing this, that, and the third. The things that I'm not supposed to be doing if I'm a so-called Christian, right? I'm saved. I'm supposed to be saved. but I guess I just went up there to make it look good. That's all I was there for, is to make myself look good. That's the only reason I went up. And you know, I think I got baptized for the same reason. A piece of me wanted to, you know, have a life change. It wasn't entirely because I wanted to please other people. A piece of me wanted that life change, but I was more focused on trying to look like my boys, and you know, like my friends. Like I had a group of guys that I always hung out with, you know. Shout out to them, and they are the coolest guys I've ever known. They were my brothers, but at the same time, I suffered with another thing. Comparison. I wanted to look like them because, you know, I was always being compared to them. We were always being compared to one another, and naturally I wanted to look like them. So I felt like I was getting baptized for that same reason, to look like my brothers, to be in the midst of my brothers, and, you know, just be in that with them. So and I had this huge fear that if I didn't, you know, I wouldn't be good enough. That was my biggest fear in life, is not being good enough, and being among 6 guys, you know, a group of brothers who you're constantly being compared to. You know, that fear was overly exaggerated within myself. I overly exaggerated that fear because I wanted to look like them, for the sake of other people to look at me and say, oh, there goes Josh. There goes Joshua, you know. It's a good boy. That's a good kid. And not just look and say, oh, there goes Joshua with those good guys that he's with. You know, I didn't want to be left out. And, you know, I didn't want to miss out on being a part of that lump, being a part of those guys that to everybody else were spiritually anointed, were talented, were good. To everybody else who was around me, you know, they were worth talking to. I wanted to have that same
It's bringing up a lot of emotions.
I wanted people to see that I had worth too.
You do. Do you want to pause?
I wanted people to see that I was just as valuable to our singing. We were a singing group mainly, but we were more, you know, just close friends, a tight-knit group that loved fellowship and brotherhood with one another. And to constantly be told that, you know, to constantly have your accomplishments or lack thereof and worth and all that stuff being put on a pedestal or put on a scale versus these other guys who are in the public eye especially in the church, in the public eye, who are doing this, that, and the third, who are great, who are funny, who are talented, who are, you know, just exotic people. And, you know, me, I'm just, I don't know. I don't know who, I didn't know who I was at that point. I was just Joshua, you know, the guy who worked with the kids in the ministry, who wrote a poem every so often and performed it just as often, and, you know, But I move forward. I try to move forward and, you know, build my own identity and be comfortable with me. But I still found myself, especially in my mid-20s, trying to be like everyone else and move like everyone else. I eventually got lost in social media. Instagram is a very toxic environment. Instagram, social media in general. Accomplishments after accomplishments. You've heard it said that, you know, they only show you what they want you to see, and that's all I ever saw. You know, what they wanted you to see. You know, the accomplishments, the achievements, the trophies. I saw the winner's circle. I saw the finished races, and me, I'm still running mine, and I'm nowhere near the finish line. So it's like, when I see them up there being handed their trophies and their roses and their flowers, I'm just like, I'm off to the side. Eventually I find myself I've stopped running altogether just to bask in my envy of their accomplishments. I'm like, that's exactly that's what my parents are talking about. That's what they're talking about. You know, how they're much better, how they do this, that, or the third, and how they're much better than me. And for a long time, I believed it. I dropped out of college because I wasn't with it, but every time my mother would bring up the fact that when my friends was in college and they're finishing college, or whenever I would go celebrate their accomplishments of graduating from college or go visit them while they're on campus, I get the same speech. Oh, you go visit their college, but you know, you're not doing what they're doing, or they're actually doing something with life, but what are you doing? And it would kill the whole mood. I couldn't even appropriately celebrate or enjoy my visit or celebrate their accomplishment because their words are in the back of my head, and I get lost in my head again. You know, I get lost I be in my own head the entire time. I'm just like, I find myself mentally competing with this person. Like, and I'm saying to myself, I can do better than them. I could do that too. I could have done that too, but I didn't. But that's the point. I didn't do it, and that's fine. That's and I've come to terms with that. I didn't do it like they do it, and that's fine. I'm constantly challenging myself and seeing that I still have worth. I have my own identity.
Where does your worth and identity stem from?
My worth and my identity stems from who I am in Christ. And my worth stems from his sacrifice. The sacrifice that he made for me. Because I don't know a lot of people in my life who are willing to die for my stupidity. So, if anything, Jesus is the source of my worth. And I don't need anyone, not even myself, telling myself otherwise. I don't need that. So I'm constantly challenging myself not to speak badly of myself, because my words have power to affect me, as they do everyone. But I find that words do affect me in a way that I don't get a lot of. For example, I don't get a lot of positive reinforcement. I didn't grow up receiving a lot of positive reinforcement, and I didn't get a lot of good jobs or I'm proud of you and stuff like that. So when people who genuinely care about me tell me I'm proud of you, like, I break down, because I believe you. I do believe you. I'm glad that you said it. And I'm happy that someone is proud of me. Not too long ago, a friend, we were having a heart-to-heart. You know, she prayed for me and everything. She looked at me, she said she was proud of me. She hardly knows much about my life, but she told me she was proud of me. Another one of my boys I was talking to, he said he was proud of me too. And those words mean a lot to me. Like, if nothing else, you don't have to give me a physical gift. You don't have to give me any material item. Your words are enough for me. I've remembered every compliment that I've ever received in my life, and those words still mean a lot to me. And I'm still learning to say those words to myself as I'm continuing on in life.
You're a Christian.
Like I said, I got saved at 14. I wasn't entirely sure what salvation was, but it wasn't until I turned 18 that I started to take, 17, 18, I started to take Christ more seriously. So you could say I was a Christian for real, for about 10, 11 years. So I've been a Christian for about 10 plus years, and it's had its ups and downs. Jesus didn't promise it was going to be pretty. And it wasn't until a few years ago where I really understood that. But I still had a problem with trusting him fully and really leaning toward him or going to him with my troubles. You know, like I said, I went back to certain vices and did certain things just to make myself feel better. So yeah, I've been a Christian for about that long. I've had about 3 church homes. I went to my first church, 4, if you count the church I grew up in as a kid, but I don't really remember the name of that church. I had that church. My second church was Church of God of Prophecy of the Last Days. My third church, Grace Bible. And then my fourth church, Alive Church, Florida Moss campus. I came to Alive about 2 years ago, and I didn't really know what to expect. I left my old church because of differences and just, I couldn't, primarily it's because I felt like I wasn't doing a lot any more growing. There wasn't any more growing to do, and I felt like my growth was being stifled. It was just a routine. So I left, as well as the fact that, you know, people are people, and I give grace and I forgive people, but there's just certain people I couldn't be around anymore. So, and having to see them every Sunday wasn't the wave. So I left of my own accord, you know, didn't really tell anybody really. I started to step down from a lot of my responsibilities, and I just bounced. I went to Grace Bible. It was cool. It was cool for the time that I was there. There wasn't really a bad reason for leaving. There was no, I just left. I didn't really think I was gonna be there forever. I was just there and I was gone. And then I found a live church a little over 2 years ago, and I didn't think much of it. I thought it was gonna be like just a temporary visit, and then I'll just leave. But then, you know, something started to draw me there a whole lot more. I made my presence known there more, and I was just like, okay, this person is cool. Okay, I've met another cool person, and then small groups, and then game nights. I think game nights were really what locked me in. You meet a lot of cool people at game nights, and Sean, he's the coolest. And when I met Sean and Tawana at those game nights, I was like, okay, they run this thing. All right, cool. And then eventually I just ended up staying. And then I did Grow Track. I started that first week in Grow Track. And the funny thing is, I disappeared for 6 months because, again, I was in my head. I was doing this, that, and the third. And then I came back because God was calling me back, and I couldn't ignore that call, especially with the way my life was going, the downward spiral my life was going. I was tired of it. I was tired of, you know, just my life going nowhere. So I was like, God, all right, let's try this again. So I came back, finished Grow Track, and then started on the photography team. And then I've been there ever since. And since then, I have shared laughter, I've shared tears, I've shared victory, I've shared defeats, I've shared triumphs, I've shared downfalls with the people that I've shared them with. And I told myself, yeah, you can't get me out of this place. Until God calls me somewhere else, you can't get me out of this church. And I can't leave. Am I perfect? In no way, shape, or form. Am I trying? In every possible way that I can. Is my trust fully in God? It is. Do I worry sometimes if He's going to steer me in a direction that I might not like, or it might be uncomfortable for me? All the time. But I still trust Him. I still trust Him, and I still move forward. I love the people that I'm around. I love the people that have encouraged me. I love the people that know me to the extent that I've shared myself in and with, and if they still accept me anyway. So I'm happy about that. I'm happy with where I am. It's not, my situations, my circumstances may not be the most favorable. And they're, whose situation is always favorable at at their desire, at their convenience. It might not be favorable, but it is my life, and I'm making the most of it. And I've learned to make the most of it. Back then, I'd want to quit. I'd want to give up. I'd want to just throw in the towel and just do what I do best and crawl under my hole and back into the vices that grab my attention. But I'm doing better. I'm getting stronger, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and I'm better than what my past was. I'm way better for that.
What does being a Christian mean to you?
For me, Christ has come a long way with me, and he is still. There are times where he still has to knock on my door every now and again. Being a Christian for me means that my life is fully surrendered to God and that my life is His. And being a Christian for me means that I get to be a version of myself. I get to be a version of me that He always intended. Like, I get to be a version of me that he gets to be pleased with, not what everybody else wants. Not this carbon copy of everybody else's expectations, or not this not the church boy type. Back then I used to label myself the church boy, but when I really understood what that meant, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to call myself this anymore. I even wrote a poem about that. And basically what that poem was saying is that I looked the part. I looked the part of a Christian. I looked that part. And being a church boy was what I thought being a Christian was. Going to church, serving on certain teams. I was a choir director. I worked with children's ministry, and I did all these things, and I thought that's what being a Christian was, just doing all these things, and maybe and God smiling on me, smile upon me, but doing all those things didn't stop me from lying. It didn't stop me from being disobedient against my parents. It didn't stop me from watching porn. It didn't stop me from masturbation. It didn't stop me from any of the other stuff that I struggle with that did not please God. It didn't stop me from any of that. And so it was there. I realized, I don't know what being a Christian means, and even if I had known that, I'm not being one. So you can imagine that almost every Sunday, going to these other churches, I'm getting saved every week. I'm getting saved consistently every week, because my old church, they didn't do altar calls as often as a live church does. They didn't do those kind of prayers every so often. So it was like having those really helped me understand that, if I'm really going to be a Christian, it doesn't call for me to like pray the sinner's prayer every week. It's a matter of, being aware of where I am, as well as being accountable for what I'm doing. Not just doing things as a Christian would do, like serving at your church or, being a part of stuff, but it was also living as a Christian lives, as a Christian intends, and being that example that Christ calls us to be, to feed the hungry, to love others as yourself, to love your neighbor as yourself, to have respect for all human life. Or will you be perfect? In no way, shape, or form, but at least I get to be, like I said, a better version of myself that he intended, rather than this facade I've lived for most of my life. I'm now 28 years old, and do I still struggle with understanding my worth and my value? Sometimes, but that stems from those difficult moments stem from, certain habitual sins that, I tend to fall back to every now and again, and that those habitual sins stem from, certain other struggles I have facing in my life in general, what I am constantly faced with, and what I deal on a day-to-day basis. And I'm learning to not go back to those things, back to those vices, because while they do feel good, they are not healthy spiritually, mentally, emotionally, or physically. So I'm trying to steer away from those things, because I want to put my full faith and trust in God, and learn to cope healthily in my situation, as well as find a different coping mechanism to deal with certain situations. So, yeah.
What is your testimony, if you had to say it in 3 words? What would it be?
Life-changing. That's one word. Would that be considered one word? Life-changing, turnaround, and chasing. And what I mean by chasing is that grace was chasing after me. God was constantly chasing after me. Constantly chasing after me. Because I've literally been told for most of my life that, hey, Josh, you're going to do great things. You're going to do great things in God's name and whatnot. And I figure that's just the staple. That's just a staple motto for every Christian. God's called you to do something great. But in my case, or at least for what I've realized, is that God's really calling me. God is really calling me. Quick backstory on, how I got my name. When my mother was pregnant with me, she didn't know. She was about ready to give birth to me, but she didn't know what my name was going to be. Usually parents, they get the gender, they sort out some names, and they come to a consensus of what name they want to give their child. She knew she was having a boy. She didn't know what name she wanted to give me. So there was this, while she was pregnant with me, she loved watching Christian movies based on the Bible and everything. something like that. There was this one movie she really loved. It was called The Ten Commandments. It was this old-fashioned, it was this old movie. I believe Jean-Claude Van Damme was in that movie. And it was one of those movies with the really, really pathetic graphics, but it still told a beautiful story regardless. And it was about the life of Moses and whatnot, and you know, the whole Egypt story, and the emancipation of the Israelites from Egypt to the Promised Land. So in that story, we meet a character named Joshua, and while in that scene where Joshua is introduced, my mother, you know, she takes an interest in Joshua's character. And you know, when I watched the movie myself, I saw that the actor that was playing Joshua, he was just this big, robust character. He was this big, robust dude, you know, like warrior-like, and he stood tall. He faced every problem and found solutions. He was, and people depended on him. People looked to him, and you know, he was just that kind of a leader. And my mother saw that guy. She was like, and she took interest in that, and took interest in his name, Joshua. She took the name, put it in the back of her head, and then continued the movie. There was that. Later that night, or one night she was sleeping, she had a dream. In that dream, she was sitting, you know, her back was in a certain direction, and somebody was sitting back to back to her. They were sitting back to back to her, and she couldn't see their face. Immediately, I discerned she told me this story, and I immediately discerned that as, you know, okay, God is literally sitting back to back with you. So this faceless figure, he's writing something. They're writing something on whatever medium that they're writing it on, and then, you know, without turning his body or turning his head to her, passes her whatever he was writing on, and on that whatever it was, paper, medium, board, whatever, it said Joshua. Okay, second confirmation. All right, cool. Around the time where she was about to give birth to me in April, a family friend came to the house. Family friend saw that my mom was going to give birth soon. She was ready to go, and asked her, "Hey, you know, is it a boy or a girl?" She said boy. And he was like, "Do you have a name for him?" She was like, she has an idea, but you know, she's not entirely sure. And he, no joke, he looked at her dead in her face and said, "If it was my child, I'd name him Joshua, because that's a strong name for a warrior, or a strong warrior." And immediately, if it was, look, the movie was one thing, the dream was another thing, but if that's not confirmation, I don't know what is. And I'm happy that if that was God's call for, you know, that being my name, I'm glad that she was obedient to that. She was obedient to that call, and making sure that my name was Joshua. And so here I am, you know, Joshua. And to this day, I think I'm more focused on living up to what that name means to me, rather than, you know, me trying to live up to, you know, everybody else's expectations. You know, even at one point, I didn't like the name Joshua. I wanted it to be switched to like Joseph or something. But I've come to love that name now because of what it means and what it represents for me, and as well as what it means in Hebrew. I mean, you know, God saves. So, yeah,